Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today's video is not gonna be a normal video, so if that's not your thing, I don't blame you for not watching it. But May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and mental health is something that I take very seriously. It's something that's impacted my life in a lot of ways, and I like to just kind of share some thoughts, talk, and just provide some outreach to people. But we will do some knife content here at the beginning. So I'm working on a video right now. I'm thinking about doing like an edge to edge on the Cold Steel American Lawman versus the Cold Steel Code 4. Today's the American Lawman. I love this knife so much. It's a really, really awesome knife. This is one of the older ones in CTS XHP. Fantastic knife. I'm kind of approaching this from the angle of what knife is better at doing both hard use and like regular day-to-day EDC, because the Code 4 and the American Lawman are both like solid heavy-duty knives, but they're also light enough and slim enough to be comfortable everyday carries. So hopefully that video will be coming out before too long. I'm actually filming this just a few days before you guys are going to be seeing it. I am behind on content. I feel like I've been saying that a lot recently, but I've been very busy and very, very stressed out. So I figure this would be a good video to post. When's this going to come out? The 11th, I think. Is it Saturday? Saturday the 11th? Yeah, because the 12th is Mother's Day. Yeah, so let's talk mental health. As some of you might know, I've talked about my struggles with mental health on the channel before. I've also talked about it like over on my Instagram. I struggle with depression. I struggle with, I'm not sure if you guys can tell from my videos, but ADHD. And coming to the realization that your mental health is something that you need to take seriously is not something that occurred to me until about 2 years ago, right? And there's a couple of reasons for this. I was always aware of mental health, right? I was always aware that it was a thing. I'm not even sure if that's the correct way to say it. I was aware of mental health. I was aware that it was a thing. That sounds wrong coming out of my mouth, but maybe that's the right way to say that. But I was aware of mental health issues. I was aware of things like depression, anxiety, panic disorder. I was aware about a lot of these things that some people for a long time in human history knew nothing about, right? Mental health awareness is kind of a new thing. And some of the bigger mental disorders or disabilities have been known about for a while, bipolar disorder, or, some of these bigger ones that are more, not necessarily more serious, but more noticeable. They've been known about for a while, and people have oftentimes treated mental health in very poor ways. Lobotomies, anyone? But it is kind of a recent thing, a recent phenomenon for people to start thinking about their mental health on a more personal scale and looking at things that are maybe not ideal at a smaller level, right? And so for me, even though for my whole life, I think I struggled with depression. My whole life, I had thoughts that were maybe not, or the way I experienced the world was not typical, but I thought it was typical, right? Because that's the only perspective that I had on it. And it took me a long time to accept help for my mental health, because I was surrounded by people who in my mind had more issues than I did. And so I always felt like it wasn't worth exploring my own problems, because they didn't seem to be as big as some of the problems that people around me were having. And it wasn't until I started seeking help that I realized, yeah, I should have looked for help sooner. And I think that's a lot of people's stories. And it might be the story for some of you watching right now. And I know that my audience is largely men. I do have a pretty high female audience, actually, for an EDC channel. I've got about... my highest video, I had 20% female viewing on one of my videos. Of course, that was a short that I made about exploring a cave. But my channel typically has about 5% female viewership, which is kind of high for EDC channels. So, welcome, ladies. But I do know that my channel is primarily men. And it's hard as guys to talk about our mental health, right? It's hard because sometimes we're not in tune enough with ourselves to recognize that this is an issue. Sometimes we're too focused on external problems to realize that there's something wrong internally. And unfortunately, some of us think that you're a pussy if you ask for help, if you admit that something's not going right. And you're not, right? You're not. I know so many guys who are deeply, deeply unhappy, but they feel like they aren't allowed to say that. And that causes a lot of problems, right? There's a lot of things in the world that can get you down. There's a lot of things that just suck, right? Maybe your job sucks. Your relationship sucks. You're not happy about where you ended up in life. You're not happy about your physicality. You're not happy about your education. You're not happy about your salary. There's a lot of things that can make us feel like we're not living up to our full potential. There's a lot of things that make us feel like we're less than. There's a lot of things, too, that make us feel we're less than that come from ourselves, right? And some of these on the surface can seem like noble efforts, right? You could be a father or a boyfriend, a husband, a friend who constantly pushes your own problems and feelings down because you want to help those around you. You want to help the people you love to live their best life. And that is, on the surface, an admirable goal, right? You want to serve those around you. And we all should serve those that we love. But if you're doing it at the expense of your own needs, then really you're just hurting yourself. And that's not that's coming from a place of disrespect for yourself. That's coming from a place of maybe insecurity, or maybe just hopelessness. You've given up on yourself and you want to try and make other people feel better. And I know what that's like. I've been there many times. The worst thing about a lot of mental health issues is that they put you in vicious repeating cycles, right? Something I've struggled with is not feeling productive, or feeling like I've wasted a day, I've wasted my time on something, and that'll put me into this stupor, this haze of depression. And that makes me even more unproductive. That makes me even less likely to tackle something that I need to be done, that needs to be done, right? And so because I started beating myself up about something, I put myself in a depressive state, nothing gets done, and then I'm beating myself up that nothing got done. It's a vicious cycle, and it sucks. It really, really sucks. And sometimes that cycle can be started by inconsequential things. Maybe what started that cycle for me was not that I was actually lazy or that I was actually neglectful of something. Perhaps it's just that I didn't get something done to the level that I wanted to get it done to. And it could be something small too. Maybe it was a picture I was drawing. I was sitting down drawing something, and I feel like I didn't do great on that. that can sometimes set off the dominoes. Not very often for me. A lot of times it's like, for example, I'll give one example that happened a few months ago. I was really, really busy with work and school, and I put off working on a project until literally the last minute. And so I'm working on this project. I'm really, really stressed on it, and I ended up not doing as good as I thought I could have done on it, and I ended up submitting it late. It was late submission, and I felt really bad. I felt guilty about procrastinating on this, and of course that sent me into the spiral. It's a vicious cycle. And the same is true, like I was saying, if you're constantly sacrificing yourself for those around you. Usually it starts with you're not satisfied with something in your life. You're not satisfied with yourself. And you think that the way you're going to be satisfied is by helping everyone around you meet their goals or get what they've always wanted. And the more you do that, the more you don't address what you're dissatisfied with in yourself, and the bigger of a problem it becomes. A lot of mental health can be addressed by building your self-esteem, building your confidence, being proud of and secure with who you are. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to change things, right? Sometimes people hear that, you should be proud of who you are, and they automatically assume, I just need to accept who I am with all my faults. No, that's not necessarily the thing. You need to make yourself into someone that you can be proud of. If you think that your health is going down the toilet, fix it. Fix your diet. Get an exercise routine, something like that. Make yourself feel proud that you are who you are, right? Make yourself into the person you want to be. There are some things that you do have to just accept, that's the way about you, right? I have a friend who's disabled, and he has an absolutely fantastic outlook on life because he's accepted that he is the way he is, and he's learned to live a different way. He's learned to bring meaning to his life despite his disability. And that's beautiful, right? But finding meaning is one of the biggest ways that you can help your self-esteem. I'll give an example. My longest relationship was, in a lot of ways, a very beautiful thing, but there's also a lot wrong with it, right? And a lot of it was stemming from the fact that my partner at the time was someone who struggled with a lot of mental health issues. And I was constantly on my toes, helping her out with a lot of that stuff. And during this time, there was a lot going on in my life. And there was a lot, I've already talked, that I struggled with, that I was ignoring, because for me, I was trying to find meaning in making her life better. And that was not healthy for either of us. It was not the way to do things. I ignored and pushed aside anything that was wrong with me and tried to focus solely on her. And the relationship has since ended. It was very painful. It was rough. But after that relationship fell apart, I realized how much of myself was in that relationship. And I needed to reevaluate who I was outside of that relationship. And I needed to finally address a lot of things that I was not addressing. And I got a therapist, started going to therapy, and I always thought that was kind of a stupid thing. I guess just kind of the culture I grew up in. Therapy never seemed like a real solution to anything. But I was wrong. It is. It absolutely is. And through therapy, I was able to address a lot of things. I was able to move past a lot of things. And I was able to start seeing myself more as a person, more as myself, and less of a character in my life, as less of a flesh suit that I was steering around. I was able to address some of my insecurities and move on and be a lot more confident in my life since. Be more confident in my interactions with myself. I've never really struggled with my interactions with other people. I've always been, well, not always, but I normally do good with interacting with people. But I always thought that I always worried about myself, like how other people were seeing me and how I was being a detriment to other people's lives. And one of the things I learned was that I had more people that I could rely on. I've talked... The pandemic was rough on me. It was really, really rough. I was trying to do school. When the virus hit, my first year of college, got sent home. Class got moved online. And at the time, the ranch, I went back home to family ranch, did not have good internet. I ended up failing a bunch of classes, lost scholarships. And throughout most of the pandemic, I was not doing school full time. I was just kind of doing classes where I could. I was living at one point during the pandemic, I was living in this little apartment, struggling to find a job. No one was hiring. And I would go weeks without seeing another person. Weeks without talking to someone. That little apartment, you guys might remember my Blue Table reviews. It was towards the beginning of this channel. That was that little apartment. I'd Skype with my girlfriend. I get to see her every so often. But at the time we were living in different cities. And it was just rough. And through that time, she kind of became the only person that I would share anything with. And again, I wouldn't really share everything with her, like I said. And after our breakup, and after the pandemic started to end, I realized that I really had no close friends. Obviously, I had Austin. You guys know Austin. He's been on the channel a couple times, but he lives in a completely different state. We live, hours and hours apart. We don't see each other that often. But like in my area, I didn't have any friends because I never met anyone or the pandemic. And I wasn't in contact with anyone from high school or anything like that. But, I started to make friends at the geology department. Honestly, saved my life. After my breakup, I I went on kind of a self-destructive streak, just hitting the bars and trying to just forget about stuff, trying to just move on. And then I started making, all these connections, and I realized that I didn't need that stuff. And of course I started going to therapy shortly after this. started, actually addressing a lot of these issues. And I started to repair my relationship with my family. And one of my biggest regrets in life was that when I was in high school, I was kind of a dick to my siblings. I have 4 younger siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters. The youngest one is about a decade younger than me. And through high school, I think a lot of high schoolers go through this, right? I was too cool for them, I also had a difficult relationship with my mother at the time. I was doing a lot of things to kind of rebel against my mom. I was sneaking out. I was getting into trouble. And I was really distant from my siblings. And then even after high school, when I came home to visit or anything, or even during the pandemic, right? Everything was a little bit stressful, but towards the middle of the pandemic, I moved out, got this little apartment and everything. When I'd come to visit, most of the time, I was with my girlfriend and not really hanging out with my siblings. And it wasn't until recently that I have tried to rebuild my relationship with my folks and my siblings. And I find it ironic that now that I'm completely moved out, not there anymore, my relationship with them is closer than it's ever been. I'll tell you a quick story. I was home visiting for Christmas, and my youngest sister, she's a real big hugger. She really likes that physical connection with people. And one of the days while I was there, leading up to Christmas, we're all kind of baking goodies and stuff. And she walks up, she gives me this hug, and I hug her back, and I squeeze her real hard. And she kind of, she looks at me and she says, "I'm not sure if you've ever hugged me." And she was probably the sibling that I was the least close to. Yeah, and hey guys, it's Gideon from the next day. I got a little choked up filming the first part of this video. I'm gonna have to edit this down a whole lot, but we're back. And I'm gonna try and end this video here pretty quick, but mental health is something that I take very, very seriously. It's something that means a lot to me. It's something that's impacted my life and the lives of a lot of my loved ones. And I think one of the reasons why it's overlooked so much is because as people, we have a tendency to say, well, I don't have it as bad as they do. I don't have it as bad as she does, he does. And that can get us to ignore or just push aside our own issues. And I want to tell you right now, don't do that, right? Yeah, there's people out there that have it harder than you. There is always someone, somewhere in the world, who lost their job, their whole family died in a plane crash, their dog ran away, and they broke their leg because they fell down the stairs all in the same morning. There's always someone out there who's having a bad day, probably worse than you. But that doesn't invalidate what you're going through. That doesn't invalidate what you struggle with. People struggle with different things. Everyone's different, right? And in this video here, I definitely, and also just online in general, I don't want to share the heaviest stuff that I've gone through, the things that have really impacted me. and really been life-changing, life-altering. But, you know, I've been through the loss of loved ones. I've been through feeling trapped, right? I've been through faith deconstructions. I've been through feeling inadequate. I've been through a lot. And that doesn't mean I've been through everything. But what I have been through is important to me. And it's something that I need to take seriously. And so I just want to tell you guys, if there's something that you feel isn't right, if there's something that you're struggling with that you haven't gotten help for, get help, right? It's out there, and it doesn't make you any less of a person for needing help. And I'll tell you too, if you seek help, take the advice you get seriously, right? And do what you need to do. Do what you're advised to do, right? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of medication either. It's something that I have struggled with, and something that I know a lot of people think is what's the word I'm looking for here? A slippery slope, maybe, like taking meds for different things. People get nervous about that, understandably so. But there are some things that you can't work through without the meds, right? Some people have vitamin D deficiency. Some people's bodies just can't process serotonin or other hormones the right way. And that is something that I have seen in my life, not with me personally, but with someone very close to me, is that the right kind of medication is night and day. Night and day. Sometimes it's just what the doctor ordered, literally, right? And because we're coming up on Mother's Day, I want to tell, again, my mostly male audience, guys, listen to the women in your life, wives, girlfriends, sisters, daughters, mothers, mother-in-laws, friends. Listen to the women in your life, right? They go through a lot of shit. They do. And guys go through a lot of shit too, right? I'm not saying they don't. But I mention this because recently I've seen a lot of things online that kind of make me sick, of guys saying things like, oh, well, I go and I work all day, and when I get home, you know, my wife better be, you know, she better have everything in line for me. You know, I put food on the table, and, you know, it's her job to provide for me at home. And that's, you know, that can be true, right? But, like, just listen to their complaints and their issues. Don't be that guy who does the whole, well, I worked 8 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. Don't be that guy, right? Don't. That causes a lot more harm. Everyone goes through shit, men and women, and I think a lot of it can be fixed by listening. And also, guys, talk to your talk to your wives, talk to your, you know, whoever you might have. Don't be afraid of being vulnerable to anyone. It's a tough world out there. It is. And sometimes you only see the bad parts of it. You only see the bigotry and the hate and the ignorance. But I believe, I try very strongly to believe that most people are good, and that the world will be a better place in the future, right? I think that's important, for me, at least. want to inject this into the video real quick. I think this is important. I hope this was kind of the theme that you guys are getting from the video, but I want to reiterate that you're not alone if you feel like you're struggling, right? Not only am I right there with you, but 1 in 5 people in the U.S. struggle with their mental health, and 1 in 25 people in the U.S. struggle with major mental health, mental illnesses like bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or things like that. And so, yeah, there's help out there. I'm going to link a couple of things in the description down below, some resources for you guys to check out if you're interested in. But I also want to say, too, that getting better is a process, right? I feel like I'm a lot better off now than I was a couple of years ago, but I'm not perfect. And I still have days where shit's rough. I've got days where I'm not doing okay. And it's important to understand that, you know, healing is a process and your mental health changes over time, right? There's a lot of external factors that contribute to your mental well-being. And there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. And it's important to kind of appreciate the small moments. Something that I kind of struggle with is I've had a lot of really high highs and a lot of really low lows in my life. And for a while there, it felt like everything that was happening in my life was a high or a low. There was no in between. There was no middle ground. And it's a really weird place to be in, because nowadays I feel like I can't handle the middle ground, the mediocrity, the just normal stuff. I'm always wanting to go adventure. I want to get out there. I want to go and risk my life, climb a fucking mountain. I want to do something that's putting me on the edge. I want to feel that adrenaline rush. And I also have a tendency to pile things on myself in order to, I don't know, feel comfortable. Because sometimes I feel comfortable with things not going right. I feel comfortable with being stressed and having a lot demanded of me. And I feel like I'm at my best when I'm at my highs and my lows. I feel like that's where I perform the best. That's where the best of me comes out to fight. And in the middle, I don't feel like myself. And that's not good. That's not the way to think about things like that. But that's the way I feel sometimes. I feel like I can't live life normally. And so, yeah, finding that balance between the highs and the lows, finding purpose, finding meaning in just the regular stuff is important. Just wanted to kind of share this message. Just take your mental health seriously. Having hobbies. We'll touch on that real quick, then I'll end this. Having hobbies is fantastic. That's one of the reasons I started this channel, was because I wanted a hobby through the pandemic. And this channel is such a great way for me to unwind when I get wound up. And sometimes those hobbies, they're lifesavers. And beyond hobbies too, just have things that give your life meaning. Find a reason to get out of bed in the morning. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I hate like living in the city. hate going to classes, which is something that is ending soon, temporarily, for me. And honestly, I'm at my happiest when I'm outside in the wild, hiking, when I'm doing my geology research. And that is something that I think is really important, is that I really love a lot of what I do for my life, right? I love geology. I love working at the Natural History Museum. There's a lot of good there. But I do get very, I get very depressed when I'm doing things that I'm not interested in. And that's also probably a character flaw. I have many character flaws. But it's good to have a hobby like this, where after I force myself to plow through the monotony of everyday life, it's good to have a hobby to play with knives and upload videos on YouTube and do things like that. And I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. This video's probably been way too long already. But we've all gone through it, right? We've all gone through it. And take your mental health seriously. Take the mental health of the people around you seriously. And yeah, just be a good person. Help each other out. So that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I guess shout out to my channel members. Feels weird doing this because it's not a typical video, but shout out to channel members. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.